year was 1969. For American soldiers in Vietnam, the war had settled into a grim, grinding reality. The initial fervor had long faded, replaced by weary endurance. The monsoon season brought with it not just torrential rain and oppressive humidity, but also a deep, soul-sapping weariness. Every patrol was a gamble, every shadow a potential ambush. The line between friend and foe blurred in the thick, suffocating jungle, and the enemy was as much the environment itself as the elusive. Viet Cong. Asterisk transitioned to a static, almost faded photograph-like image of an 8-man recon squad. Their faces show a mixture of youth, exhaustion, and hardened resolve. Sounds, the sound of heavy rain lessened slightly, replaced by the faint, eerie dripping of water within a dense forest. The distant chatter of a military base. Asterisk, it was in this suffocating atmosphere that Sergeant Brick Riley's 8-man reconnaissance patrol was tasked with a deep insertion, seasoned, cynical, and utterly reliant on each other. They were the Hornets, known for their resilience. Asterisk, there was Riley, the pragmatic leader. Doc Davies, the quiet, observant medic. Private Ghost Garcia, the unnervingly silent scout. And the rest, faces hardened by months of jungle hell. Asterisk, a hand tracing a route on a worn, old military map. The designated area is a blank, deep green section, perhaps marked with faded, ambiguous local symbols. A specific grid square is circled. Sounds, a subtle, low, almost breathy hum begins to fade in like a distant, sustained wind through something hollow. Radio crackle. Asterisk, their mission, a 7-day deep reconnaissance into an uncharted sector of dense primary jungle, far from known routes. Intelligence suggested a high probability of a hidden Viet Cong logistical base, a crucial target. Local intel was scarce, limited to vague warnings from Montana tribesmen about the silent mountain. Asterisk, a place where voices call from the empty air and the earth swallows men whole. The warnings were dismissed as primitive superstition, but the Hornets were about to discover that in Vietnam, some battlegrounds were far older than any war, and some enemies couldn't be killed with bullets. Asterisk, inside a dimly lit canvas briefing tent, sand-colored light filters through, doing little to combat the oppressive heat. The air is thick, almost tangible. Sounds, the constant hum of generators outside, distant faint shouts. The soft rustle of uniforms as men shift in their seats. Asterisk, the pale, lifeless light filtered through the sand-colored canvas of the briefing tent. The air, thick with the humid press of Kandahar, felt like a living, observant entity, creeping through my fatigues, taking possession of my skin. Asterisk, my team sat on their swaying folding chairs around an old, rough-hewn table cobbled together from salvaged crates. We were the ones they called when the world started to go wrong in ways that gunpowder and bullets couldn't explain. We were ghosts sent to hunt ghosts. Asterisk, across the table, focus on Elias Conconagan, meticulously cleaning his binoculars with unnerving stillness. His silence is like a still island in a turbulent river. Sounds, the soft click of metal on metal. As Con cleans his binoculars, the narrator's internal monologue is heard over the subtle hum. Asterisk, across from me, Elias Conaghan, Con as we called him, meticulously polished his binoculars with an unnerving stillness. His silence was like a still island in a turbulent river, while the river and my own chest churned with unease. Asterisk, to my left, Corporal Rico Rodriguez fidgeted a toothpick from one corner of his mouth to the other, his leg tapping a nervous rhythm. Against the hard-packed earth, a frantic, unheard heartbeat of anxiety. Asterisk, Doc Davies, the team's medic, meticulously sketching in a notebook, drawing bones and organs like a cartographer, mapping a strange, fractured landscape. Sounds, the faint scratching of a pen on paper. Doc's quiet, almost mournful sighs. Asterisk, our team's medic, Major Mallory, known simply as Doc to us, scribbled furiously in a worn notebook. He sketched bones and organs, like a cartographer charting a strange, fractured landscape. For him, the world was always something waiting to be repaired. Asterisk, Lieutenant Wallace stands next to a projector screen, a young man fresh from the academy, rigid as if forged from steel. Sounds, the quiet whirring of the projector. Wallace is stiff, almost nervous stance. Asterisk, beside the projector screen stood Lieutenant Wallace, a young man fresh from the academy. He stood rigid as if forged from steel, and you could tell immediately he feared he'd shatter if he moved an inch. Asterisk, Colonel Matthew pushes through the tent flap, bringing a wave of heat with him. His face is chiseled by sun and hard wars. Sounds. The rustle of the tent flap. Matthew's heavy, purposeful footsteps. Asterisk, asterisk, Colonel Matthew voice, gravelly, no nonsense, all right, listen up. Asterisk, a faded, lifeless light flashes onto the screen, revealing geometric shapes of sand-filled barriers and canvas tents. Faint human footprints disappear on the unforgiving ground. Sounds a dull, flat click as the slide changes. The hum of the projector intensifies slightly. Asterisk, the pale, lifeless light flashed onto the screen, revealing geometric shapes of sand-filled barriers and canvas tents. Faint human footprints faded on ground that refused to accept them for long. The forward operating base looked like a child's toy dropped at the foot of a mountain range. They called the Hindu Kush the bones of empires that had dared to defy it. Asterisk, asterisk, Colonel Matthew voice, flat, emotionless. This is forward operating. Base Kilo 7, asterisk, close up on Rico. His toothpick falls from his mouth. Sounds a soft clink as the toothpick hits the ground. A sharp, audible intake of breath from Rico. Asterisk, get over yesterday. The base went dark. Asterisk, Rico voice, strained barely a whisper. Taliban. Asterisk, asterisk, that's our working assumption, but my gut tells me otherwise. The 10th Battalion was stationed there. 68 lives. Kilo 7, or Devil's Roost as they called it, was established 3 months ago to monitor suspected trade routes through the Torca Mountains. Asterisk, the screen zooms in, moving across the base's central area. No lights, no wreckage, no signs of human violence. It looks unnervingly clean. Sounds a subtle, low, disquieting hum begins to build in the background. The projector whirring gets louder. Asterisk, the screen zoomed closer, moving towards the heart of the base's compound. No lights, no wreckage, no signs of human violence. It looked unnervingly clean. Radio silence, no distress signals. Satellites picked up nothing. A drone that flew over this morning found no signs of life, no bodies, no enemy, just emptiness. Asterisk, command wants this wrapped up quietly. They're worried it's a new chemical weapon, or a mass desertion. God knows where they'd go in a country like this. Asterisk, asterisk, Matthew's gaze fixes on the narrator, then sweeps across the faces of the others in the tent. Sounds, the low hum grows. Almost a subtle drone now. Asterisk, Colonel Matthew, your team. Carter, you're going in. Assess the situation, report back, find out what happened. Asterisk, narrator, you want 5 of us for 68 missing men. My question sounded small, almost insignificant. A cold knot formed in my stomach. 5 of us for 68 missing men. Asterisk, asterisk, Colonel Matthew, you and your team are discreet, covert. If we send in an army, it becomes an international incident. We need to know what we're dealing with before we kick a hornet's nest. You're the best I've got, Carter. Get it done. Asterisk, fade to black. Sounds a single, sharp, authoritative clap of hands. Then, the roar and hum of a Black Hawk helicopter. Fade back in. Asterisk, inside a Black Hawk helicopter. The roaring engines and vibrations fill the frame. Soldiers look tense, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of console lights. Sounds the deafening roar of the Black Hawk, the thrum of the rotors. The tension is palpable. Asterisk, the Black Hawk that carried us was a beast of roaring noise and frayed nerves. We flew low and fast. The land below looked like crumpled brown fabric in the hand of God. Then, the mountains began to rise to meet us when the forward operating base appeared. It was just as the drone had shown, utterly abandoned, a ghost town built of sand and wire. Asterisk, the Black Hawk touches down 50 meters from the objective. The rotor wash kicks up a violent dust storm, obscuring the base in a nightmare fog. Sounds the intense whoosh of rotor wash, dust hitting the helicopter, a sudden, jarring THUMP as the helicopter lands. The engine noise slowly dies down. Asterisk, the pilot set us down 50 meters from the objective. The rotor wash kicked up a sea of dust, as if the ground itself had become a nightmare, obscured by a storm of its own making. The moment the engines quieted, a new silence fell upon us. Asterisk, no generator hum, no distant chatter of men, not even the hum of insects. Only the soft, sad whisper of wind weaving through the concertina wire, like a hired mourner crying at a funeral. Asterisk, the team disembarks cautiously, moving through the dust storm. Their rifles sweep the eerie, silent landscape. The camp gate hangs, open like a forgotten mouth. Sounds the subtle, chilling whistle of wind through wire. the crunch of boots on sand, the distant, faint creak of rusty metal. Asterisk Sergeant Riley voice, low, tense, okay, you lead. Carter, Rico, cover our back. Con, find an overwatch position. Doc, stay with me. Asterisk, we move like men hunting something that might just be hunting us. Our rifle muzzles swept the dead air. The camp gate hung wide open, like a mouth that had forgotten how to close. Inside, we found a small war abandoned mid-fight on the backs of trucks. Asterisk, a Humvee sits with its hood up, facing the sky like it's begging for air. Beside it, engine parts are laid out on a plastic tarp. Eerily organized sounds the soft clinking of engine parts in the wind, a strange, unsettling stillness. A Humvee sat with its hood up, facing the sky like it was begging for air. Beside it, engine parts were laid out on a plastic tarp arranged with an unnerving precision. In the mess tent, a plate of food sat frozen on a table, the meal hardened. Even the flies that had once swarmed the ketchup bottle were now corpses, entombed in their own dried blood. Asterisk close up on the plate of hardened food and the dead flies. No blood stains, no spent casings, sounds, the eerie silence, a faint crackle. From Rico's radio, a short burst of static. Asterisk, no blood stains. No spent casings. Asterisk, Rico voice, distorted over radio. A mix of disbelief and fear. They didn't fire a single shot. Asterisk, Con voice, faint, distant. From high above, observation post set on the south guard tower. Carter, I don't see anything. No tracks leading out of the camp. It's like they evaporated. Asterisk, the team moves through the barracks tents one by one. Each tent is identical. Beds neatly made. Books open on nightstands, some with folded pages. No signs of struggle. Sounds. The rustle of tent flaps. The soft, eerie silence within each tent. A subtle, high-pitched whine begins to even build under the silence. Asterisk, we push through the barracks tents one by one, parting canvas over these impromptu tombs. Each one was identical. Beds neatly made, books open on nightstands, some with folded pages. You don't leave a picture of your daughter if you have any hope of coming back. This was no desertion. There was a taste in the air, strange and metallic, like diluted blood, yet hidden beneath a foreign, almost putrid scent. It was the taste of blood, but deeper than that. The taste of something savage. Asterisk, Doc Davies calls from the comms tent. He's kneeling beside a large metal container, his face pale with horror. The side of the container has 3 deep, ragged claw marks gouged through the metal. Sounds, Doc's urgent call. A low, guttural groan begins to permeate the air. The faint, rhythmic thump of something heavy dragging. Asterisk, Doc Davies' voice shaking with horror. Carter, you gotta see this. Asterisk, we found him kneeling beside a large metal container. The side of the steel box bore 3 deep, ragged gashes, torn through the metal like the rind of a bitter fruit. Each gash was about a foot apart. Asterisk, Doc Davies' voice, shaking. No animal I know does this. Look at the edges, not sharp like claws, but jagged, almost like teeth. Asterisk, a wave of dread washes over the narrator. He follows Doc's horrified gaze around to the back of the container. The horrifying scene is revealed. The 68 men of Kilo 7 are piled in a long shadow, dismembered, their bodies torn apart by an insatiable hunger. Sounds, a sudden chilling hiss in the background, the sound of wet, tearing flesh. The narrator's gasp. Asterisk, a wave of dread washed over me. I followed Doc's horrifying gaze around to the back of the container. We saw what happened to the 68 men of Kilo 7. They were piled in the long shadow of the wall, 68 corpses, or at least what remained of them. Asterisk, bodies dismembered by a hunger that knew no mercy, no war. Limbs ripped from sockets, torsos, torn open like seed pods, stripped clean. They weren't killed, they were butchered, like pigs in a slaughterhouse. Asterisk, Doc and Miller vomit onto the sand, while it stands frozen, his face ashen like stone drain of color. Rico is utterly silent, his knuckles white on his rifle. Sounds of retching. Wallace's ragged breathing. Rico's clenched teeth. Asterisk, I'd seen what bombs and bullets did to human bodies. This was darker. This was not human. Doc and Miller turned to vomit onto the sand. Wallace stood frozen like a statue, his face ashen like stone drain of color. Even Rico was utterly silent, his hand clenched so tight on his rifle his knuckles were bone white. Asterisk, Wallace's voice, barely a whisper. Oh God. Asterisk, the narrator's eyes follow a deep, dark, slimy trail on the sand leading from the gore. Not towards the camp gate, but towards a towering rock face above them, a black void. An unnatural opening is visible in the cliff face. Sounds a chilling, foul stench is implied by the narrator's voice. The low, deep hum from before returns emanating from the cave entrance. Asterisk, my eyes followed a deep, dark, slimy trail on the sand that led from the bloodied pile. It didn't head towards the camp gate. It went straight towards the towering rock face above us, and there, beneath the echoing shadow of the cliff, was a black void that should not have been in that rock face. A thick, sickening stench wafted from it. Asterisk, narrator voice. His voice sounds alien to himself. Khan, do you see it? Khan voice, steady, eerily calm over radio. Yes, Carter. Large cave mouth. Drag marks lead right into it. Asterisk, and the truth descended, crushing on my shoulders. Whatever did this, it wasn't in the camp. It came from that cave, and now it had dragged its prizes home. Asterisk, Riley orders retreat and an airstrike. The narrator internally agrees, sounds Riley's urgent voice. The narrator's internal thought, filled with dread. Asterisk, Sergeant Riley voice, urgent. Panicked, we fall back, call for an airstrike, bomb this whole mountain to hell. Asterisk, narrator voice, my voice is strained, forced. Colonel's orders, Lieutenant. We don't know what we're dealing with. If it's a new bioweapon, bombing could spread it. We need intel first. Asterisk, convoys, calm, resolute over radio. He's right, Carter. We walked in blind, but we have to see. Asterisk, the team prepares to enter the cave, switching from rifles to close quarters weapons. The narrator grabs his shotgun. They strap all their grenades to themselves. Con is their last link to the outside world. Sounds, the click and clatter of weapons being adjusted, the snap of clips, the dull thump of grenades being secured, the low, menacing hum emanating from the cave mouth. Asterisk, we prepared to enter the cave, switching from long rifles to close quarters weapons. I grabbed my shotgun. We strapped every grenade we had to ourselves. Con was our last rope back to the outside world, and the four of us walked towards the cave mouth. The air that refused the sun's light. The heat was sucked from my skin. Something had been waiting in that darkness for a very, very long time. Asterisk, narrator voice, hushed. Barely audible. Rico, you lead. Move slow. Report every 10 meters. Narrator, we stepped across that threshold, and the last vestiges of sunlight and reason were left behind. Asterisk, inside the cave. The walls are slick with a black, viscous liquid. The passage is narrow, wet, and chillingly cold to the touch. Their flashlight beams dance frantically across the slick walls. Sounds, the squelch of boots on the wet floor. The constant, sickening drip, drip, drip of the black liquid. The faint, echoing, chittering sound begins. Asterisk, the cave floor was slick, coated in some black, viscous liquid I didn't even want to name. Passage was a narrow, wet, chillingly cold throat when touched. Our gun-mounted flashlights danced wildly across those slick, black walls, 20 meters in. The narrow passage began to open up, and we stood in what looked like an underground cathedral of darkness. Asterisk, reveal the interior of the cathedral. It's a nest built from shredded military uniforms, coiled concertina wire, and thin strands of what can only be human hair. Scattered around these grotesque constructions are human bones, gnawed and fractured into tiny fragments. Sounds, the low, guttural chittering is louder now, echoing through the vast space. The sickening crunch of bones underfoot. Asterisk, here. It was a nest, built from shredded military uniforms, coiled concertina wire, and thin, impossibly long strands of what could only be human hair. And scattered around these grotesque constructions were bones. Human bones, gnawed and fractured into tiny fragments. Asterisk, Wallace. Voice, barely a whisper, filled with horror. Oh God, it's a monster's nest. Asterisk, a sound echoes from the depths of the cave. It's not a roar or a scream, but a wet, rapid, interlocking clicking of jaws, synchronized, coming from all directions. Sounds, the chilling, wet, rapid clicking of mandibles, echoing through the cavern. It bypasses the ears, settling deep into the soul. The sound is everywhere. Asterisk, then the sound came. It drifted from the depths and echoed through the dark cathedral. It wasn't a roar. It wasn't a scream, but it was a wet, rapid, interlocking clicking of mandibles. synchronized and precise, a sound that bypassed the ears and burrowed into every part of your soul. It came from every direction, from tunnels we couldn't yet see, from cracks in the ceiling above, and from the utter darkness all around us. Asterisk Rico voice screaming but directionless. Enemy narrator. Rico screamed, but he didn't even know where to aim. And then they separated from the shadows. Asterisk the creatures revealed themselves. Humanoid but impossibly tall, with unnaturally long jointed limbs. Their skin is pale, translucent, with dark green veins visible like the underside of worms. No eyes, just stretched skin where eyes should be. Their jaws split open horizontally, revealing rows of sharp, bone-needle teeth. They move with shivering speed, silently, like hungry predators. Sounds, the rapid, wet clicking is now sharp and terrifying. The faint, grating sound of bone claws on rock. A low, unsettling hissing. Asterisk. They were humanoid, but impossibly tall. Their limbs unnaturally long and jointed in ways nature never intended. The skin was pale, translucent, with dark green veins clearly visible, like the underside of a freshly flipped worm. Their thin skin was stretched taut over muscle and protruding bone. Where their eyes should have been, there was only sealed flesh, no holes, no way to see. Their jaws split open horizontally, and their faces opened in a terrifying grimace, revealing rows of sharp, bone-needle teeth like a wall of needles. They moved with a shivering speed, utterly silent, like hungry avian predators. Their jagged bone claws scraped quietly along the rock, a barely audible, maddening sound. Asterisk, the first creature dropped silently from the ceiling, landing beside Wallace. Its unnatural long arm punches through Wallace's chest from behind, emerging from his chest, wet and glistening like a living spear of flesh. Wallace's eyes widen in shock before he collapses. Sounds, a sudden, terrifying thump as the creature lands silently. A sickening squelch as the arm penetrates Wallace. Wallace's gurgling gasp. Then a final thud as his body hits the rock. The narrator screams fire amidst the chaos. Sounds of rapid gunfire. Asterisk, the first one dropped from the ceiling without a sound, landing beside Lieutenant Wallace. My brain couldn't register what it was. Its impossibly long arm punched through Wallace's body from behind. The arm emerged from his chest, wet and glistening like a living spear of flesh. He let out his last breath, filled with blood and collapse, his eyes wide in shock before his body slumped to the rock floor. The whole world collapsed into the muzzle flashes of our guns and our screams of fire. Asterisk Rico reacts, screaming and unleashing a torrent of tracer rounds from his M249. Red lines cut across the creature's pale skin. They shriek. One creature is hit, recoiling. Two more emerge. The narrator fires his shotgun, blowing apart the head of a creature. Sounds, Rico's M249 roars, the high-pitched, ear-splitting shriek of the creatures. The terrifying chung-chung of the shotgun, the wet, tearing sounds of flesh and bone. Asterisk Rico responded with the roar of his M249. Tracer rounds painted red lines across their pale skin. They shrieked, a high-pitched, tooth-grating sound. It recoiled, but it didn't fall. Two more emerged from the darkness to replace it. My shotgun roared, a powerful, single boom. The face of the nearest creature exploded into a bloody, ragged mess, but it didn't stop. It lunged at me, its face a raw, eyeless mess of flesh and needle teeth. I fired again. Its head became bone and tissue, splattering across the cave wall. Asterisk Doc Davies' voice panicked. They're everywhere. Doc screamed, his aim for spitting bullets. But it was useless. Asterisk, the team tries to retreat to the entrance. But the path is now filled with creatures. A new wave surges from deeper in the cave. Sounds, the frantic clatter of aim for fire. The deep, guttural roar of the creatures as they surge forward. Sounds of frantic, desperate scrambling. Asterisk, we were trapped in a tomb. One creature lunged at Rico just as his weapon ran dry. He jammed his muzzle into its mouth, but its jaws slammed down on the barrel, bending the steel like a toy. Another appeared from the side, its claws tearing Rico's flesh from his side like thin cloth. He screamed a final, fear-filled cry, but the sound was cut short by the crunch of bone. His leg kicked in the air before they dragged him into the darkness. Asterisk narrator voice, a raw, desperate shout, Rico, no. Asterisk Rico is dragged into the darkness. Sounds, Rico's final, cut-off scream, the tearing of flesh and bone. A sickening squelch as he's pulled into the darkness. The chilling clicking and hissing sounds surround the narrator, Frantic call comes over the radio. Asterisk con voice distorted over radio, but steady. Rico's down. He's gone, Carter. I'm coming to you. Stay there. Asterisk something slammed into me from the side. Its breath was hot and putrid, like the wind from a tomb. Its bone claws scraped along my helmet, searching for an opening. I jammed the shotgun barrel into where its throat should have been and fired my last round. The recoil slammed into my shoulder, but the head of that monster stopped because it wasn't there anymore. Asterisk the narrator rolls clear of the creature's body, fumbling for his pistol. He sees Doc Davies kneeling over Wallace's destroyed body, sounds the narrator's ragged breathing. The frantic clicks of his pistol's magazine. Doc Davies low, pain groan. Asterisk narrator voice screaming, Doc, over here. Asterisk a gun blast echoes from the cave entrance. The approaching creatures stop. One has a large hole blown through its chest. Sounds the sharp crack of a rifle. The creature's clicking abruptly halts. The sound of a body hitting the ground. Asterisk con voice calm, almost disembodied. From the entrance, Carter, over here. I've got your back. Asterisk con. He stood at the narrow tunnel entrance. Like a man from a better world, he fired again and again into the writhing mass in front of me, buying me another second to breathe. Asterisk the narrator sprints towards Khan through the narrow rock passage. He's gasping for air. Sounds the narrator's desperate, ragged breathing. The distant sound of creatures trying to claw through the fallen rock. Khan's rifle fire continues. Asterisk I ran with every ounce of strength I had past him into the narrow rock passage. They killed everyone, I gasped, the words burning my throat with bile. I know, he said, his face hard as he cycled another round into his rifle. We have to seal this tunnel. Asterisk Khan kicks at the cave wall, sending rocks and gravel tumbling down, partially sealing the way behind them. The sounds of the creatures are still audible from behind the fallen rock. Sounds the loud crumble of falling rock, the dry, scraping sound of claws on rock, the relentless, untiring scurrying of the creatures. Asterisk he kicked at the cave wall. Rocks and gravel tumbled down, partially sealing the way behind us. We could still hear them from behind the fallen rock, the dry scrape of claws on stone, the tireless, creeping movements. Asterisk Khan voice calm despite the roaring darkness. How many magazines, Carter? Asterisk to mags for my sidearm. You. Asterisk a mag and a half for the rifle. Not enough. It's never enough. Anywhere in the world. Asterisk the narrator whispers a name. He sees a vision of his wife, Sarah, pregnant. Sounds the whispered name, a soft, almost ethereal female voice. A momentary warmth in the chilling narrative. Asterisk Sarah, asterisk I saw her face and her swollen belly. Carrying my son, a son I might never see. Don't do that, Carter, Khan said. Don't give up yet. He was right. I shook the phantoms from my mind. Okay, what's the plan, Khan? Asterisk Khan peeks back through the narrow passage, looking at the sliver of sunlight near the cave entrance. Sounds the distant sounds of the creatures clawing at the rock. The subtle thump-thump-thump of a Black Hawk helicopter in the distance, getting louder. Asterisk he craned his neck, looking back down the passage, towards the faint sliver of sunlight near the entrance. We can't stay here. They'll dig through or just wait us out. Only one way, run straight for the radio. Black Hawk. Asterisk a sudden sound of scratching, a pale, three-fingered hand claws through the rock they'd piled. The narrator fires his pistol wildly. The hand vanishes, sounds a sudden sharp scrape of claws on rock. The narrator's frantic pistol fire, a high-pitched, metallic shriek that abruptly cuts off. Asterisk just then, a scratching sound. A pale, three-fingered hand clawed through the rocks we'd piled. I fired instantly, my pistol bucking in my hand. The hand vanished with a high-pitched, metallic shriek. I'll hold them here. Run. Asterisk the narrator sprints towards the sunlight. The sounds of the creatures clawing at the rock and Khan's rifle fire behind him. He bursts out into bright sunlight and clean air. He's almost at the helicopter. Sounds the narrator's desperate, ragged breathing. The frantic scrape of creatures. The rapid crack of Khan's rifle. The loud whoosh of the Black Hawk rotors nearby, then a massive explosion behind him. The sound of debris hitting the ground. Asterisk I sprinted for the light towards the cave mouth. The sound of the monsters trying to claw through the rock mingled with the roar of Khan's rifle. I burst out of the cave into blinding sunlight and clean air. I was almost at the helicopter. Then, an explosion ripped through the air behind me. Con, he couldn't hold them. Asterisk, the narrator is shocked, imagining Con's fate. He turns to the calm's tent nearby. On its roof, a gigantic, bull-like creature with pale skin and ancient scars from centuries of conflict lands. Sounds. The narrator's choked gasp. The heavy thud of the creature landing on the tent roof. The low, guttural ROAR. Asterisk, I was shocked by the sound and the images it conjured. But when I turned to the calm's tent, not far from me, I was even more shocked because on the roof of the tent stood a gigantic, bull-like creature. Its pale skin was etched with ancient scars as if it had endured centuries of conflict. It leaped down, cutting off my entire world before letting out a guttural roar. My pistol, useless in my hand, felt like a pathetic toy. Asterisk. The creature swipes at him, its jagged claw tears through his body armor, drawing blood. The narrator collapses. Sounds. The creature's heavy swipe. A sickening, tearing sound as the claw rips through the armor and into flesh. The narrator's grunt of pain. A burning sensation is implied by the narrator's voice. Fade to black. Asterisk, there was no soldier left in me then, just an animal seeing its own tomb and refusing to accept it. I lunged for a heavy steel wrench lying by a Humvee. It swiped at me instantly. Its jagged claw tore through my bulletproof vest, carving a long red trail into my chest. Deep into the flesh, it burned like fire. Asterisk, the narrator wakes up in a clean, white hospital room. The sheets are strangely smooth. His wife, Sarah, sits by his bed, her hand on her pregnant belly. Sounds. The quiet hum of hospital machinery. Sarah's gentle breathing. Asterisk, I woke up in a clean, white room. The sheets were so smooth they felt strange against my skin. Sarah sat beside my bed, her hand resting on her swollen belly. For a split second, I thought it was all just a fever dream from the desert, a nightmare that didn't exist. Asterisk, the narrator breathes, then sees the thick, puckered scar where they'd sewn up his chest. He knows it's real. Sounds. The narrator's deep, shuddering breath. A faint, internal hum still lingers. Asterisk, but I took a breath, and I was awake, and I saw it. The thick, puckered scar where they'd stitched my chest, and I knew it was real. The next day, the narrator sits across from clean-cut, dust-free officers. He recounts his story. Sounds. The quiet clicks of a tape recorder. The narrator's voice is strained but resolute as he recounts the horrors. Asterisk, the next day, I sat across from men in uniform so clean they knew no dust, no blood. They asked me to tell them everything, and I did. I told them about the cave, about the nest built of wire and hair, about the creatures with no eyes and bone claws. I told them about Rico being dragged away, about Doc being torn beyond recognition, about Wallace falling silently, and about Con facing God with the song of his rifle. Asterisk, I told them everything. Asterisk, the colonel who oversaw the debriefing interlocks, his fingers forming a small mountain on the table. He looks at the narrator like a problem to be solved. Sounds. The soft click of the colonel's fingers. His voice is calm, clinical. Asterisk, colonel voice, calm, clinical, devoid of emotion. Matthew, you've been through a deeply traumatic experience. The men in the 10th unit were attacked by an overwhelming insurgent force. In your fragile mental state, your mind has created something to suppress a truth that is simply ugly. Nothing more profound than that. Asterisk, the official report spoke of an ambush of an overwhelming enemy, of a sole survivor whose mind was understandably unsound. It was a believable story. They gave me medals for the blood I'd shed, and a commendation in a file that declared me whole and ready to re-enter the world. I came home. I held my wife. I was there when my son opened his eyes to the world. I tried to be the man they deserved. Asterisk, night. The narrator is sleepless. The house is still, but he feels the weight of the darkness, visions of the cave, the pale limbs, the wet clicking. Ken's final prayer. Sounds. The profound silence of the night, the faint internal clicking and hissing begin again. Ken's final desperate shout echoes. Asterisk, but when the day ended and the silence fell, and my eyes closed, I went back to the belly of the mountain. I saw pale limbs moving in the flashlight's beam. I heard the wet clicking that never stopped. I heard men shatter, and I heard Ken's final prayer echoing into the darkness. Asterisk, the survivor is never truly whole, because I left pieces of myself there. Parts of me are in that cave, listening under rock and fire, under the shadow of a monster. Some nights I don't sleep. The house is still, but I feel the weight of the darkness that shrouds this world. And the same thought churns in my mind. Asterisk a final wide shot of the vast green, innocent-looking Vietnamese jungle. The camera slowly zooms in on the specific area of the silent mountain, which looks just like any other patch of trees, perhaps a slightly darker, more ominous green. The sounds of the jungle are peaceful again, just before the screen fades to black. Very faint, lingering, almost imperceptible hum, clicking, and a soft hiss can be heard, suggesting the horror still resides there waiting. Asterisk narrator. Voice hollow, chilling, with a profound sense of unending dread. They filed that trauma away. They buried the truth under rock and lies. But what if that rock was just a seal on one tomb? What if there are countless more such underground layers hidden in those quiet peaks? The thing in the darkness, it might not be gone. It's just waiting. Asterisk screen fades to black. A single, unsettling, ethereal hum lingers, then slowly fades into complete silence, leaving a profound, lasting chill.